Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Still recovering. Thankfully, I still have older footage to go through. This was actually a birthday card I made for one of my kids over a month ago now. Had all the footage, finally got some time last night to edit everything. I used a whole bunch of Simon Says Stamps picture book animals. I had mentioned this in a few of my videos. I remember saying that I'd used a bunch of these to create a card, and a whole ton of scrap cardstock as well. Obviously, I have a ton of cardstock, have had for years. I have tons of colors. If you don't have a whole lot of colors of cardstock, you could totally just use white and color it with markers or colored pencils, or you could use a little bit of watercolor paper and watercolor the pieces. I've seen some people create some really dimensional looking animals by, adding shading and color and sponging and all that kind of stuff. Like, the sky's kind of the limit these. So far, I've just been using cardstock scraps because I have a lot. And I have enough colors that I can just dig through my scraps and pull out just random pieces that will work. And that's what I did for all these little characters. So I did a whole ton of die cutting. And I had mentioned in other videos when I use these, I usually like using my little baby sidekick die cutting machine because I can run through, do all the little bits and pieces. But with this time, I used my Big Shot because I was doing multiples. Altogether, I think I die cut 7 different animals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 7 different animals. And I'll have them all listed in the supplies. So I was doing tons of die cutting. And I die cut them all from all the different little scraps of cardstock that I wanted. And then once I had all of my pieces, I had a scrap of just copy paper here. And I definitely prefer this way of doing it. You could totally just adhere all your little pieces to create your characters directly onto your card or your project or whatever. But so far, every time I've created with these, I much prefer adhering the pieces to copy paper. And I always make sure that I don't go right up to the very edges of all these little pieces with my adhesive, because that gives me that little bit of leeway that I can undercut this copy paper and you're not going to see it along the edges of all these little critters. And then that also gives me, which you'll see in a bit, that gives me that extra leeway when I want to arrange all these characters and I can move them around and not have to adhere them yet. I can pop them up with foam tape, etc. So I'm just adhering all these little pieces and building them all up onto my copy paper with just using Nouveau adhesive, because if it does happen to ooze out, I use a fairly light hand with it because I don't want it to go past the edges. But if it did happen to ooze out at all, you're not going to see it, which mostly it'll ooze out a little bit where I add adhesive to where I put their little eyes, because it's such a tiny, tiny little space. But you could also use Ranger's Multi-Matte Medium. That's a fabulous adhesive as well. But I just usually use the Nouveau because it's just sitting right there, convenient, and I haven't had a problem with it. So I adhered all my little characters onto the copy paper. And again, I chose copy paper because you could adhere it to cardstock if you want, but that's a lot of extra cutting, and the copy paper is very, very thin and easy to cut through. Just your standard thin printer paper. And it's all I wanted is to hold these characters together. I've got them adhered to that, but then I'm going to use, foam tape or other adhesive to actually adhere to my finished card. So the copy paper is more just to hold all these little pieces in place. So after I'm done adhering everything, and sometimes I would use my little jewel picker to press in little areas, I'd use my little die pick to pop out pieces, etc. After everything is done, I trim out, do a rough trim, since I'm doing so many, with my scissors. And then I'm going along and basically just undercutting. So I'm kind of slipping the scissors right under the edge of these little characters and cutting away all the excess copy paper. Doesn't take very long. The majority of these characters are really easy to trim out because they're, fairly simple lines along the outside. This honestly doesn't take any time at all. And like I said, because it's copy paper, it just slices through. And these scissors, I've had this specific pair of Cutter Bee scissors for I don't even know how many years now, and I cut a lot of cardstock and paper, etc. with them, and they are still incredibly sharp. I absolutely love these scissors. So I just quickly go around those edges and trim away that paper to make sure there's no little bits kind of peeking out past the edges. And then after I was done all those characters, I went through a whole bunch more scrap cardstock and die cut several balloons using the Balloons Wafer dies from Simon Says Stamp. I used the 2 smallest from that set and just die cut a whole bunch of scraps of cardstock in rainbow colors. So I would do, you know, I did a red and a pink and 2 shades of orange, 2 shades of yellow, green, blue, etc. And then I took some heavyweight white thread. This is kind of like, this was probably the most time consuming step, and even this didn't take that long because I kind of do everything in like mass production order, so I do it all at once. But I basically took the thread, wrapped it around the bottom of the balloon there so it looks like it's tied around the balloon. And then rather than actually tying it, I just tape it with a little piece of Scotch tape. And then I flip the thread down so it's going to come down the bottom of the balloon so it looks like the string is attached there. And I put a dab of that multi-medium matte adhesive and another piece of tape just to hold the thread in place. And then left a long enough tail so that it'll hang down later on. And I just did that over and over again and let everything dry. So that took a little bit of time and effort, but when it comes to making my kids' birthday cards, I kind of like to go all out because it's just fun. So I did all those balloons, let that multi-medium matte adhesive dry so all those strings were secured into place. My card base is heavyweight white cardstock that I had cut to 10 inches by 7 inches. So this is going to be a 5 by 7 card. 99% of the time I do an A2 size card, like 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. But with the amount of balloons I had and the amount of characters I had, I needed a bigger card surface. So 5 by 7 card it is. And I laid out all these balloons first along the top of my card. I wanted the whole cluster to basically completely cover the top of this card. So I laid them out how I wanted them to look. And then I actually took a piece of press and seal wrap. I love my press and seal. It doesn't even go back in my kitchen. I keep a roll right behind me in my craft room at all times. So I took that press and seal wrap and pressed it against all those balloons to hold them into place. Another tip to be, if you didn't have this, would be just take a picture of it with your phone so you know kind of the order you have them in. But I wanted to use the press and seal because this way I've got them all semi-adhered into place or held in place, I guess, temporarily. And then I can apply my foam adhesive. So I put the card back onto those balloons for a second and used a pencil just to draw along the back because I knew there was parts of the balloons that were going to hang off the edge. So I used that pencil on the back of them just so I know not to put any of the foam tape over those pencil lines, just to make my life a little bit easier when I go to trim this off. And then I'm going to apply foam tape. So I've got just pieces of foam tape all along these back balloons. Obviously, some of the ones in the front aren't going to get any adhesive on them, but I'm going to deal with those in a minute. So applying all this foam adhesive, making sure to keep it inside those little pencil lines that I drew that you can't really see on camera, but I can see them in real life. And then I'm going to peel off the backing of the foam tape pieces. And then I can pick up this piece of press and seal wrap and then position it over my card front and adhere these exactly where I want them to go. So I get my card front lined up on my work surface, and then I can adhere all of those balloons, press those down, and then when I peel up the press and seal, it's going to remove all those balloons that don't have any adhesive on them. So now I can flip this over again and apply another layer of foam tape to these ones, so they're going to be popped up with even more dimension. So I applied my foam tape to the back of all of these balloons, and then same thing, peel off the backing, and then I can flip this over and reposition these. I had to make sure to apply a little tiny square of foam tape to that top right corner there because so that purple balloon would have something to adhere to. Now I can flip this over, adhere them where I want them, press them down, and then peel away that press and seal wrap, and all those balloons are in place. So after I had everything in place, I was able to flip over my card here, and then I just used scissors to trim off the balloons hanging over the edge, which I could have left. For whatever reason, I just wanted to, even though I was like literally handing this to my child. I wasn't putting this in an envelope or anything. If you are mailing this, you could just mail it in a larger, like I would mail this in like a bubble envelope for sure with all the dimension on it. But I didn't need to trim everything off. But I just like the look of the top having the straight edges. So I trimmed them off. And this is where it was nice having all of my characters separate, adhered to the copy paper. I was able to move them around until I was happy with the cluster that I had made with them and where I wanted to position all of them. So that made it way more convenient. And then I was able to flip them over, add foam tape to the back of these, and then start adhering them onto my card. And I was able to pull down the balloon strings and pull them fairly taut. And then the foam tape on the back of the critters is holding all of the balloon strings in place. So that was also why I had purposely used that multimedia mat on the back of the balloons so that the string wasn't just pulling off of everything. So after I got all of my little characters popped onto the card front with more foam tape, that little cat's tail there, I decided where, which side I wanted to put them on. And then I just adhered that into place with a little bit of the multimedia matte glue. And then I trimmed off the bottoms of all those strings with my scissors. And then to finish the inside of the card, I have the painted Happy Birthday die from Simon. This came out a couple years ago. It's still one of my favorites. And I die cut it from some of the newer Simon glitter cardstock that I love. I have a whole bunch of it on order because I never want to run out of this stuff. It's just gorgeous. Looks more green in camera. I chose the more kind of turquoisey color. And then the number 12 is from an older discontinued die set. I can link to, I think Altenew came out with a really awesome large number die set recently. So I will link to a similar set. I absolutely love having a really big number die set. I use them so often when I do birthday cards or anything like anniversary style cards, anything where you're celebrating, a numbered occasion. I get so much use out of large number dies. So I adhered that into place and that finished off my card. So I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll have links to all of the supplies used, so you can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, and commenting on my videos, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!